Hey, it's Matt here from Native Instruments. In this video, we are doing a deep dive into Absynth 6. The goal is simple: load a preset and actually understand how it's built. We'll break down the signal flow, look at each module in context, and show how everything connects. By the end, you should feel comfortable dissecting any preset and reshaping it into something that's truly yours. This is how to use everything in Absynth 6. Let's get into it. First up, the header. This is the top-level control center for Absynth. This top section here is the header of Absynth 6. Over here we have our Absynth title. You can click on that and get into seeing some detailed information about the creators and who was involved in this project. Next to that we have these three dots. This opens up a menu where you can create new presets, open presets, save as, which are similar to these two buttons right here. We have our settings menu. Here you have the general page, and you can change things such as the default page that you see when you load it up. The resizing. If we go to the next one, we have content. Here you can fill in some information, your details. So if you save presets, you can actually have it as the default author. Below that, we have our sample directories. So if you're loading samples in, you can have them automatically come from specific locations on your computer. Then we get to surround. This lets you set your surround information. You have a couple different options here to choose from. And you can see it changes the placement of each speaker. You can also manually change these. Next to this menu, we have our preset name. You can go left and right and flip through different presets. You can also hit this little drop down and open up the full list of presets. Here we have save. If you're on a factory preset and you make some adjustments and you click save, a box is going to pop up to save as opposed to just saving the preset. If you're on a user preset, it will just overwrite that user preset. You also have save as next to it. Here we have the mutate button. This relates to the mutator down here. So it's similar to pressing this button. It's just another option. And we will get into the mutator later on in this video. If we keep going, we have all of our pages, and this is how you navigate through Absynth 6. So you have your browser page, patch, effect, wave, envelope, LFO, and your assign page. Let's go back to the browser. Beyond this, we have our audio input levels, our audio output levels, and depending on whether you're using surround or not, these will be grayed out. You can change the output volume here, and if you double click, you can type in a specific amount. Next to this, we have our engine restart button. This is kind of like a panic button in the situation that MIDI might be stuck. It pretty much just kills any audio stream and restarts the audio engine. And below that, we have our CPU percentage. Now we're in the browser and mutator. This is where Absynth really opens up. You can explore presets in detail, filter them by tags and characteristics, and quickly understand what kind of instrument or effect you're working with. Right now we are in the preset explorer view. This is kind of like a giant map of all of your presets that are here on the side. And you can filter these by different banks, types, subtypes. You have characters and slider control to actually dial down exactly what you're looking for. And we're going to break down all of these different attributes. The main window here is your preset explorer. You can move this around. You can zoom in and out with your mouse. You can also use the little navigation controls down here to move up or down and zoom in and out. Now, as we zoom in, you're going to see all these different dots. Each one of these dots is an individual preset. The different colors relate to the different types of sounds. So you'll see these red ones are drums. And when you hover over one of these presets, a little tooltip comes up and lets you know what the different attributes of that sound are. Now, the closer the sounds are together, the more similar they're going to be. And that could vary a bit depending on what type of sound it is. So if it's a drum sound and a synth lead, maybe they're both bright, or maybe they both have a short attack. So the characters play a big role in how these sounds are connected together. On the right here, we have our preset list. This can be hidden. So if you want the full view here, you can get that. Here we have the search option, and you can search for things such as kick. Then you're going to see all of your presets that have the word kick in it. Now, if you don't want to view the presets in this view, you can go to the preset list view. And this lets you see all of the presets. You can still sort by different attributes here. So if we say synth lead, we're going to see all our synth leads. And in this view, you actually get to see the name of the presets, the types, so you can see all the different attributes they're attached to, the characters, and who created them. Next to that, we have our favorites, so you can simply star them and add them to your favorites list, and properties, which gives you more info on each preset. If we click the favorite button up top, we're going to see our favorites. And next to that, we have user presets. I don't have any stored in here right now, but if you have any user presets, they will show up here. When you have different attributes or characters selected, for instance, if you go back to the preset Explorer view, you're still going to see all those presets with the tags you have selected. Let's go ahead and reset this by clicking this button right here. And let's start with banks. Under banks, you can sort by different versions of Absynth. So if you want to go back to legacy and see those presets, which all still work and function here, you can do that. You can see how many things you have selected with this number right here. And to clear it, you just hit the X here. Another way to clear it is just unclick what's highlighted. Next, we have types. The types break it down by instrument. So you can select something like brass and see which brass presets you have. Let's go ahead and click one. Notice you hear a sound when you click these presets. And that's because I have Audition on. So what's really nice about that is it allows you to hear the sound before you actually load it in, saving some time on loading presets. Let's go down and select Synth Lead. Now you can see how many presets we have here under Synth Lead. And when you select one of these types, it opens up subtypes. So you can really narrow it down here. Let's select something like soft. Another cool thing you can do is use the arrows on your keyboard to jump around the Explorer view. So now I'm pushing up. Let's go right, down, left. So that's really cool because you can just browse through the view that way instead of just going up or down on the actual list here. So under characters, you can select multiple. And again, to remove the characters you have selected, you can unclick whatever is highlighted or hit the X here and it's going to remove everything. Let's go ahead and select those again. And let's go down to sliders. Now the slider control gives you extremely fine macro adjustments. You can grab the left or right side of these sliders. So let's look for something bright. I'm just going to move this up. You notice how presets are disappearing. We're really narrowing those search results here. Now we have these bright sounds. You can grab the entire slider and move it over. Let's go back to dark. See what we got. Yeah, that's cool. Or we can grab the right handle of the slider and open it up even more. One thing to note is when you're in the preset list view, you lose the slider functionality. So you don't get that micro control. You only get that in the Explorer view. I like that preset, so let's go ahead and load it by double clicking. From here, the Mutator lets you generate variations, lock specific parts of a sound, and experiment safely without losing the original idea. This bottom section here is our Mutator. Let's go ahead and open the expanded view. And we have some different modules in here to mutate our sound. Now, what mutating your sound does is it allows you to select different attributes or tags in your instrument list here, and then mutate that sound so it sounds closer to what's being displayed in the preset Explorer. You can also just mutate your sound as is and change the parameters of that sound to see what comes out. This first section here is our module lock. Now we're going to get into the modules a little bit later, but this allows you to basically decide what you want mutated and what you don't want mutated. If it is selected, it's going to be mutated. If you deselect them, they'll be grayed out like this. And that means that is not going to be mutated and it's not going to change. Now, if it's already grayed out and can't be selected, that just means there's no module that can be selected. So we can lock things such as the oscillators or audio generators. And to give you an idea, these correspond to our patch page. So you can see our different modules. Notice how I said these are grayed out, and that's because they are not on. So you'll see our 6 modules here and the 3 on the bottom. And that is exactly what you're seeing down here. So if you don't want, let's say, these 3 to be changed, these 3 modules are not going to change. They're going to be locked when we mutate. Let's go back to the browser. Let's just select everything for now. You can also decide to mutate the macro controls, LFO, or the envelopes. After that, we have our preset mutation. Mutating is based off whatever you have in the search area. So our mutations will adapt to whatever attributes or tags you have selected and which presets are currently being shown. With the mutation amount, if we go to the left, it's going to be less like the search results and closer to the original preset that you have selected. If we go to the right, it's going to take on more of the attributes of whatever is shown in the map. I'm going to go to types and let's just reset all of this. Let's select something percussive. Here's the sound. Now, if we go all the way to the left and click mutate, not much is going to change. If I go all the way to the right and mutate, it's going to be drastically different. It's percussion, so think faster attacks, things like that. Let's click retry to retry the mutation. If you notice in the mutation history box, it saves each one of these mutates. When you click retry, it actually overwrites your last mutation, so you can't go back to it. Whereas if I click mutate again, you're going to see it generates a new mutation. The best part is you can always get back to your original idea. Or maybe we liked a different mutation. Pretty cool. Let's go back to the original and let's select something like vocal. I'm going to turn this down a bit and mutate. Let's retry. That's pretty awesome. Below that, we have our random amount. This adjusts the amount of randomization applied to the mutated parameters. So if we go to the left, not as many of the parameters of the different effects or oscillators are going to be changed. Whereas if we go to the right, they're going to be drastically different. I think the best way to show this is let's turn down the mutation amount and go back to our original sound. And I'm going to go ahead and lower this all the way to the left. Let's go to the patch page so you can see what's being changed. And I'm going to click mutate, which is this button right here as well. What you're going to notice is not many of the parameters change. Very small. Let's go back to the browser, and now I'm going to turn the random all the way up. Let's go back to patch, and I'm going to mutate. Now you see all those parameters shift. We're not really changing many of the modules here. We are just affecting the randomization of the parameters since we have the mutation amount all the way to the left. Let's change this to brass. Let's turn up the mutation amount, turn down the random a bit, and let's mutate. Retry. The best part about this is you really get something new every single time, and you can basically create a sound nobody's ever had just by mutating it. It's super awesome. Next to this, we have our fine tuning. This allows you to adjust different parameters based on the original preset. So these will automatically be preloaded depending on whatever preset you have selected, and it's just fine-tuning adjustments. Under mutation history, you have these two buttons down here. This allows you to save your mutation preset. And this button is the reset. This clears the mutation history, removing all the mutations from the list. It's good to note that when you click this button, it cannot be undone. So if there's a mutation in here that you like, make sure you save it before you press this. Just a little tip here, if you're setting the mutation amount all the way to the right, you're going to get a more predictable result. So it might be something that actually sounds a little bit better. And that's because the Mutator algorithm is more likely to load a whole chain or channel from a patch as opposed to maybe just one oscillator or one LFO. You're getting complete chains that might be loaded into that mutation. So sonically, it might just sound better if you have it all the way over here. But at the same time, you never know. That's the beauty of the Mutator. Onto the patch page. This is where Absynth's audio modules live and where the sound is actually generated. Each channel can host different oscillator types like wavetables, sampling, granular, or external audio inputs, and this page shows how those sources are routed and combined. Let's first look at the main overview of the patch page before we dive in to each component. Right off the bat, you'll notice you have three channels, channel A, channel B, and channel C. Within each channel, you have individual modules. The top modules here are the sound source modules. So this is what generates the sound within Absynth 6. And that could be different types of oscillators, sample engines, granular engines, or an audio input. So we have two insert modules below that, and these can also be changed whether they're filters, modulators, or wave shapers. So the sound is going to run from your sound source into each insert module. Below that, we have our volume control and pan if you are in surround sound mode, which you can turn on right here. Now the routing for all these modules is already preset for you. So you can turn these on. Now we have three sound sources going through some insert modules. And if you follow these lines here, you'll notice they all lead to these modules down here. These are two additional insert modules, and they have the same exact options as the insert modules above them. The difference being all of these sound sources are now being routed to this individual modulator. So you're controlling the entire sound source through these modulators here. Again, you can turn them on and off. And then finally, we get to our effects. The effects chain can actually be controlled on the effect page, which we're going to get into after this. But this is just a quick way to adjust and change effects on the fly. I'm going to go ahead and click on a new preset here. So we are back to an initiated patch. In our first component here, I have just a single oscillator selected. This is what it sounds like. Just a regular sine wave, nothing crazy. We have a few different options here. We can transpose up or down by semitone. Just click and drag. You can also fine tune it. On Mac, I'm going to hit Command and click. That'll reset this. We can invert our wave. It's a sine wave, so you're not really going to hear much of a difference there. Below that, we have our waveform selection page. You can select different types of waveforms here. You can also select morphed waveforms. Let's click a couple. And if you click new, it'll take us to our wave editor page where you can actually change and adjust your waveforms and make your own. We'll get into that a little bit later. Let's go back to the patch page. We have sync. Right now with our phase, it's set to sync. So this means every time you press a key, it will restart at the exact phase of the wave you have selected here. So it's going to be identical every time you push it. And you can change that phase. If you set it to free, every time you press a key, it's going to shift where the waveform actually starts. So it'll never actually be identical. Let's go ahead and set that to sync. The next page we have here is our unison page. This allows you to add additional voices. Let's do 8 voices, and we have detune. I'm going to drag down and reset it. So now you'll notice it's just louder because there's no tuning difference between the voices. All we're doing is stacking more voices, making it louder in volume. We can tune the voices. What this is doing is it's transposing the even number additional voices down and the odd number additional voices up. So you can actually get some pretty cool results. And you have fine tune below that. Next to this, we have random, and this adjusts the amount of additional random detuning up and down in semitones. So what I'm going to do here is just play one note over and over, and you'll notice with random turned up, it's going to change those voices randomly. This is without it on. Let's turn this up to 5. That's the same note over and over again. You'll notice it's randomly changing those voices. Again, you have fine-tune control. Pretty crazy. Just by playing one note, you can get some really cool voicing options there. Back on the main page, if you hit this drop down, you have a few different options here. Copy source module, which allows you to copy just this module. And if we turn on B, let's go ahead and change this so it's a little different. We can copy module and paste module. That makes it really easy if you want to just copy settings to different channels here. You can also copy complete channels and paste them on different channels. And below this, we have mutate, and this mutates the individual component. See, it's changing some of those settings. This is going to be based on whatever settings you have on the mutation amount. So if we just set this to a bit higher and hit mutate, look at that. Look what it's done to the wave there. Let's add some voices and mutate. And you'll notice every time I'm mutating, it's giving me all these additional saved mutation history. If you want to overwrite your existing mutation, you can just click retry mutate. Pretty cool way to get some unique results just by mutating. Again, it does depend on what you have set here in the mutation page. In the drop-down menu, you have multiple different oscillators. If you want to learn more about these, I recommend just giving them a try or checking out the manual for extreme deep detail on how these oscillators function. Let's go ahead and check out the sample engine. Here we can select our sample. Absynth 6 comes with tons of different samples. You can also upload your own. You can use WAV, AIFF, MP3, OGG, or FLAC formats. Let's load in a sample from Absynth 6. So that's the sample right there. We can transpose it up or down. We can affect the start time of the sample. On the loop page, we have loop off, loop on, which will restart the sample every time you hold the key. So let's go ahead and try that. And restart. And then you have the loop edit. Now this allows you to specify a specific loop point within the sample. So it's going to play the sample from whatever start point you have selected here, and then it's going to continue to loop that section. So what's going to happen is as I hit the key, it's going to play the sample from here. Then when it gets to this section, it's going to loop it. You can make it smaller by dragging here. You can also shift the whole thing. There's lots of cool things you can do there. This button here actually allows you to switch it from mono to stereo. If you have a stereo sample loaded in, you can click this and switch it to mono. If you have a mono sample loaded, you're not going to be able to switch it to stereo. Moving on to the granular engine. For reference, the sampler engine plays audio back in a traditional linear style, while the granular engine slices that audio into tiny grains and reshapes it for more experimental and evolving textures. The next sound source is the granular engine. This has almost the same controls as the sample engine with a few extras. Let's go ahead and load a different sample. That works. We have our frequency up and down. We have time, and this is going to control the playback speed of the sample. So right now it's at 100, which is normal playback speed. Let's slow it down. It's really stretching those samples. Speed it up. It's super fast. Let's go to the grain. We have the density, which determines the number of grains that are played simultaneously. Grain size, which determines the length of the grains, and a few other options here. Time jitter, randomness of the grain's playback speed. Frequency jitter changes the pitch of the individual grains randomly, and amp jitter, which changes the amplitude or loudness of the individual grains randomly. So a lot of random options here to get some really crazy sounds. Let's load a sample that you can really tell how it's being affected. Slow it down. Adding some pitch. It's almost like random LFOs with the amplitude. The other sound source we have is the audio input module. This doesn't produce a signal itself, but it actually transmits incoming audio to its output. So that makes it possible for any audio signal to go through the insert modules and effects in real time. This is really cool because you can use Absynth 6 as an effect to work with live audio signals from anywhere. For this example, I'm going to run my Moog Sub 37 into an input. You can see here we have stereo input control or mono. I'm going to use mono for this one, and we have audio control. I have the Sub 37 running into input 1 here, and we're going to get into effects later on and go more in detail on this, but just to give you an idea of some things you can do, we can turn these inserts on, or turn on our effects modules. It is good to mention that if you're not hearing any audio signal from external sources, you have to press a MIDI note on your keyboard to trigger the envelopes of Absynth 6 because it runs the same way as if you were playing an oscillator or a sound source. Moving lower on the patch page, below the signal source is where sound starts getting shaped and transformed. Insert modules like filters, combs, ring mods, and frequency shifters live directly in the signal path. After that, we move into effects, which add space, movement, and complexity. As I mentioned earlier, you have 2 insert modules below each sound source, and that's for each channel A, B, and C. And then when we get down later on in the routing, we have 2 additional inserts, which affect all the signal from all 3 channels going to them. These inserts have the same options on every single one, and we're going to go through a couple of those now. So if we click our little drop-down menu here, you'll notice you have filters. These amplify or attenuate specific frequency content from the input signal. And these are all the filters available. You have low pass, high pass, band pass, notch. You have a low pass filter feedback, all pass filter, a super comb, and a comb. And then all the way at the bottom, you have the legacy filters, which is great because these will work with the original presets from Absynth, and you can also just use these for your sound. Let's go ahead and change our oscillator to something a little more interesting and something like this. So this is a ladder low pass filter. You can hear that resonance. We can change the curve here. Make it 6. Hear a little bit more coming through. This is our main window here. Next to that, we have our mix window. So let's just lower this. And in the mix window, you can control the mix of the insert. So now you're just getting a little of that filter in here. So similar to the options above, you have copy and paste, as well as paste insert module and envelopes. We also have the mutate feature for just this specific module. And this is dependent on the mutate settings you have here. So let's just make these really high. Let's go back to the main and mutate. You notice that changes quite a bit. Let's check out a couple of these other filters like the super comb. Really cool visual feedback here. Different feedback types. So you can actually get in here and select different feedback types based off other modulators such as the wave shaper, frequency shifter, or ring modulator. Tone with adjustments. And again, your mix. And more of that FM oscillation come out. So lots of control here with the filters. As I said earlier, if you really want to dive in deep with these, definitely worth checking out the manual for all that info. Let's move on to the modulators and let's check out the frequency shifter. What modulators do is they use their own built-in oscillator to modulate the incoming signal. So think of it as having almost another oscillator down here, which is what this is, and that's what you can select. You can choose different types of waves, and this modulates this oscillator's wave extremely quickly or slowly depending on the hertz you have set. Let's check that out. Right now it's almost acting as an LFO that's affecting the pitch because how slow I have it. So you hear that square wave turning on and off affecting that sine wave. So those are modulators. Again, you have a ring mod as well with different controls. Each one of these are going to have their own controls. Below that, we get to our wave shaper. A wave shaper uses a waveform to shape the input signal based off amplitude, so how loud it is. Let's select a different wave type. Again, a square works the best for the example. And that's an idea on the insert modules. So you can stack these, have multiple insert modules, and the routing goes from your sound source to the first insert module, then the second. And when all these come together, they go through the bottom two insert modules here if you have them turned on. I've gone ahead and loaded a preset. I've turned everything off other than what's coming from the patch page here. So there's no LFOs or effects or anything like that. So what you're hearing now is these 3 oscillators go through. Each one has its own insert, low pass filter feedback, and an all pass feedback. Once they go through each one, then they go down here to the wave shaper, then to the low pass filter feedback. And if we had the effects on, they go to the effects here. So let's just turn off each sound source and start with this one here. So that's just a saw wave going through this low pass filter with some unison voices. Let's add B to that mix. Turn off A so you can hear it. little bit softer. And here's C. So with all those, that's our sound. Now those go into this wave shaper. Again, based off amplitude. So as the input gets louder, it shapes the wave based off this waveform here. We can change this to something else like a triangle wave. Hear how it gets louder, you hear the waves speeding up. That's the shape. Then we get to the low pass filter feedback. So you hear how it's affecting all of these going through each channel into the wave shaper, then here at the feedback page. And I think that's a really good example of how the routing works. The last module in the chain here is the effects module. And this is actually configured on the effects page, which we're going to get into next here. But this just shows you how it works in the chain and gives you some important parameters right up front. Go ahead and change this to something like the resonator. Very cool. So it's just a quick way to access your effects before you really dive deep into the effect page. You can turn it on and off right here. And if you want to go deeper, we can head over to the effect page and let's check it out. On the patch page, you saw that single insert at the end of the signal chain, which gives you basic control over the selected effect. The effect page is where you go for full access and detailed configuration of that same effect. This is the effect page. It consists of 6 different effects that you can choose from with tons of settings for each one. This is my current sound and patch that I'm using. Just so you have an idea. Let's go ahead and turn the effect page on. Before we get into the individual effects, I'm going to go over this top section here. I'm going to set the effect to echoes just so we have a clear indication of what's happening. The input mix section allows you to adjust signal levels coming from the patch page before they are processed by the effect selected on the effect page. We have our individual channels A, B, and C. This adjusts the levels of individual channel signals coming from the patch page. Below that, we have our master level. This adjusts the level of the main signal coming from the patch page, which is composed according to each channel's volume and pan controls on the patch page. So right now, if I go to the patch page, the volume and pan here is what is being sent to the master here. And you can hear that with the echo. If we turn this down, we can turn up just channel A, and now only this single oscillator on channel A is going to go into the effect mix. Compared to channel B, which is a different oscillator. Can really hear it there. Let's turn the dry down so you can really hear the difference. And if we turn up channel A, let's turn the master up. Now you're hearing both of them. Below this, we have high pass and low pass. These are just simple filters for the effects. Turn down the low pass. And this is post dry amount. So if I turn the dry amount back up, and a high pass. Moving on to the surround panner, all of the available effects support multi-channel applications from multiple delay taps to independent resonators, which can be placed separately in the stereo field. This is a great way to expand the possibilities for spatial sound design. So we have a few different parameters here. We have the position, which moves the position of all the effect signals around a circle in the stereo field. This is really going to be audible if you're listening on a surround sound system. We have spread, which distributes the effect signals across a circle in the stereo field. And those are kind of coming from behind you there, or closer to center. You have rotate, which routes an internal LFO to position and creates a circular movement of all the effect signals. Look at that, that's so cool. And then this controls the speed of the LFO. Slow it down. Speed it up. And each effect is going to give you a different amount of signals that you can send to surround. So, for instance, let's turn off rotate. On multicomb here, you can see how many we're sending. We get lots of options, and you can control the individual pan of those depending on which effect you're selected on. The control section lets a single macro drive multiple effect parameters, with depth scaling the overall amount and smooth shaping how that movement feels. Using the pipe effect is the best way to visually see this, so let's check it out. So first what I'm going to do is just set a macro, so we'll just use macro control 1. You can see that pops up here now. And each effect has a control send on individual parameters. For this effect, we have a control for output left and output right. You can see if I go to different effects, we have different control options here. This right here is the master control section, and it selects which macro drives those control sends. So we're on macro 1, and this macro down here is going to control the sends of the individual parameters. The depth scales the overall influence of the macro across all enabled control sends in the effect. Let's just hear what that sounds like. See how wide they're going here? Whereas if we set the depth to something like 0.5, notice how they pushed in. They're not going to go as far. So what's happening is when the macro is moved either manually or via DAW automation, the effect parameters respond based on their individual control amounts. It's scaled by the master depth and shaped by smooth. You could think of smooth like a glide. It controls how fast it's going to react to the movement. So let's set this back to 100% and turn smooth all the way down. So it's just standard, like I'm moving it back and forth. And if we turn smooth all the way up, you're going to see a delayed movement. So basically what you're doing is you're setting the individual parameter sends, and this macro knob is controlling those individual sends based on the overall depth set by the master control up top. This is really useful if you want something to move over a specific amount of time by adjusting a macro control, especially if you're using the smooth feature. Now let's go through the effects, and let's start with the first one, which is the etherizer. The etherizer is a granular processor that allows you to process the signal on the level of small fragments of sound called grains. There's a lot of functionality within each effect. I'm going to go through the general concept of what each one does. If you really want to get granular here, definitely check out the manual for more information. Within the etherizer, you have a delay, and this actually feeds individual delays to the granular processor. So we can turn on the delay just so you can hear it. Set this to beat. Turn up the feedback. You're not hearing it now. So we can send those delays to the granular processor. Here is feedback of the grains. Let's turn the delay off for a minute. You're really hearing it there. You also have a high density mode, and in the high density mode, the grain cloud can reach higher densities, which results in both a fuller and more polished sound. It does use a bit more CPU though. We have pre-delay of the grain. Hear it come in late. And then we have the rate at which the input signal is chopped. Let's turn this way up. Here it's shorter. Below this, we have the duration. This adjusts the length of each grain. You also have the control functions, which again, you can send to the master control over here. And you have jitter, which allows for randomization of the individual control. On this side, we have transpose, where you can transpose the grains. Turn this way up. Within that, you have tone shaping of the grains. So there's a filter with a bandpass or comb filter. And you can quantize the filter based on specific scales. So let's just do octaves here. Makes it sound nice and musical. The etherizer also gives you this nice big display which shows you a visual representation of your grain cloud. The vertical axis is the pitch and the horizontal axis is time. Each grain is represented by a small triangle followed by a horizontal trail, which represents the length. See, they're getting shorter. Now they're moving faster and longer. Look at the amount of feedback there. Very cool. The multi-comb specializes in modulation effects, offering up to 6 independent comb filters that each use low-pass filters in the feedback loop. By applying modulation, you can easily achieve flanging or other effects based on phase shift. I will say for subtle to moderate phase modulations, you definitely want to choose a medium value. High feedback rates can produce a tunable resonance effect that almost sounds like a chord, which can be pretty cool. So in this main window here, you'll notice you have all of your individual multi-comb filters. They all have the same controls, and all of these feed into the master controls right up here. Let's start off by just turning off all the filters except for one. Up top here, we can sync this by seconds or by beat. We have the feedback. It's going to go longer or shorter. And then an overall low pass filter of all of the multi-comb filters. So they're all going to feed into this low pass filter. Each filter again has its own parameters, but they are all the same. We have time, which determines the maximum delay of the feedback signal. Shorter you go is going to be more of a vibration compared to a delay. You have control of that time, which is being sent to the master control over here for the macros. Feedback controls how long that delay is, similar to this feedback. Low pass for each individual comb filter. Level being sent to the output, and then you have pan, which changes the position of the filter. So you can see if I change this, it moves on the surround display up there. Let's go ahead and turn another one on. Low pass this one a little bit more. You're hearing that one, it's a little faster. If we turn the low pass up, we can low pass all of them. Let's turn them all on. So you can see each one has a variation in time that we have set here. And that's the multi-comb. The next effect here is resonators. I'm going to use a higher pitch so we can really hear what's happening with this effect. This consists of 3 virtual resonant bodies. These resonators can produce echo and reverb effects from infinite spaces to shorter, brighter sounding rooms, or they can simulate the sound of specific objects such as metal bars, brake drums, and bottles. We have our main controls right here up top. These control the size, which sets the maximum delay length. Let's turn this all the way up. You have feedback, which controls how long that delay is compared to short. We have color, which controls the filters inside the resonators. This is going to change depending on which mode is selected on the individual resonator. Pre-delay in milliseconds. You can hear it comes in later. We have diffusion, which creates random delay variations. And drive, which regulates the input signal. Getting a little distortion there all the way up, pretty cool. This button turns on our early reflections. You can hear them there, it's a little brighter compared to off. And then we get into the individual echo paths, which each one has its own controls and can be set accordingly. We have 4 different modes. We have clean, natural, resonant, and synthetic. I have the size and feedback and things set pretty extreme so you can hear what's happening here. We have clean, which is a dampened delay. The sound flutters and it is less diffused. We have natural, which is more diffused variations. It sounds a bit dark. We have resonant, even more diffused and brighter. And then the last one is synthetic, which is similar to resonant, just more extreme. You can really hear it almost sounds like the resonance is being pulled up on a filter there. Each one of these resonators has its own controls. We have the size scale. The shape, which allows you to adjust the various delay ratios. Switch this to resonant. Little slap back there, it's pretty cool. The control features, which send to the macro controls. We have 2 additional knobs here for color scale and color spread. If we turn the color spread all the way up, it's going to produce a more diffused sound, and also it reduces the feedback. And then if we adjust the color scale, it's going to be a result of the fixed master tone value multiplied by the setting selected in the tone scale control, which is right here. Here's brighter. Let's turn the scale all the way up. Can really hear the difference here when we turn the scale on and off, especially on the spread. It's almost like applying filters to the individual delays and how it gets multiplied. It's pretty cool. And then you have the control for each color, which gets sent to the macro control. You'll notice on the controls, you have these little phase flips. So if you wanted to move the opposite way of the macro, you can flip the phase and invert it right here. So you can turn on all of these different resonators, set them to different options. Pipe replicates the physical qualities of resonating bodies and reassembles a so-called waveguide. This isn't like other waveguides that are based on physical modeling. It doesn't try to realistically simulate a specific instrument or another natural resonating body. And I think that's what makes it unique. What's really helpful is to imagine this waveguide as a string or a pipe. The string model uses an exciter at a variable position of the string, which is the input here. You can hear how it excites the frequencies based off where the input position is set. And then it uses two pickups, which can be placed freely along the string, the left and the right pickup. You have your master controls up top of the effect, so we can change this from seconds to beats. Since we're changing time, you're always going to hear those types of feedback effects. You have feedback, low pass, and then control delay, which gets sent to the macro controls. As I showed earlier with the control functionality, you can set your macro to macro 1, and now we can control the positions based off the depth and smoothing for this macro. I like to turn smooth up for this effect and depth all the way up. Let's reset these to the center. Play some harmonies. Really cool effect, and by modulating things, you can get some really unexpected and expected results, which I dig a lot. The next effect is echoes. This is tailored towards creating a classic echo effect. The input signal can be delayed individually in up to 3 delay paths, each with its own filter configuration, including a low pass, high pass, and all pass filter. Up top here, we have our master settings, so your sync type and feedback. Let's turn these other filters off for a second. And feedback control. And then you have the individual delays, time, feedback, control for the macro controls, the filters, as I mentioned, level and pan based off the surround panning. What's cool about feedback is this sets the level of each individual's echo signal, but it's actually routed back to the input as a percentage of the original signal's input level. So you can get some really cool effects by adjusting the feedback of each echo. Let's turn some of these on and set different filters for each one. Low pass this, just so you can hear it. High pass this one. Hear that one on the right side. And let's all pass. Turn all of them on. Let's turn rotate on. Speed this up. Really cool effects you can get with the echo and the surround rotate on. I like that. The last effect here is the multi-tap. It's a simple delay with 3 taps. The input signal is delayed according to the time set for each tap, creating 3 copies of the input signal. So here, let's go ahead and set this to beat. And to really explain how this works, I'm going to turn down the volume of tap 2 and 3. We have a simple low pass filter. So you can hear how it just copies that input signal one time, tap 1. Let's turn up tap 2. The time determines the delay of each respective tap in % of the value selected in the time control of the master section right here. So if you're set to beats, this will always be in time with beats, but it could be a 16th note, 32nd note, things like that. So now we're hearing tap 1 and 2. Really hearing tap 2 on the left there. And let's turn up tap 3, which is going to come in on the right. You can change the timing. Now you don't have feedback control for everything. You only have one feedback control, and it's for tap 1. This regulates the level of the signal, which is rerouted to the input as a percentage of the original signal's level. Again, really cool using the rotate function. Absynth 6 can also be used to process plugins and external synths by running it as an effects plugin. Let's check it out. So here I am in Logic Pro. I have LCO producer strings up. And we can run Absynth 6 as an insert effect. So I'm going to go to my audio effects in Logic and select Absynth 6 effect. And now this pulls up a new window where you can browse through different effects in the browser instead of instruments. So these are all of our different effects, presets that we can select from. You can also sort by bank. Click here to remove it, or the X up top. And let's just go ahead and select an effect. See what else we got here. Sounds cool. Really like this one. On our patch page, you can see we have channels A, B, and C with just the audio inputs, stereo, and you can use all these additional modules to process your sound. So you're not limited to just the effect page. You have all these different insert modules you can also apply to whatever sound you're processing it with. If we go to our effect page, here are different effects. You can also use the functionality of the envelopes. So you can use envelopes for anything you'd like. And the LFO. The LFOs are fully usable. You can see right now we're using them on channel B for the volume. Let's turn it on all of the channels. So lots of control here as an effect plugin as well. It's also good to note that you can use any of the macro controls for these effects. And they're fully mappable. You can automate any of these. And on top of that, you can mutate your effects. Get some pretty crazy stuff here. Or we could just select another one, mutate that one. You still have all your same options for fine tuning and module lock. And that is running Absynth 6 as an effect inside Logic Pro. The wave page. This is where you define the actual shape of a sound. You can load wave presets, draw your own waveforms, and work in the spectral view to reshape harmonics. Plus, the morph control lets you move between wave states over time for evolving textures. Let's check it out. This is the waveform page here, and as you'll see, we have no current waveforms in here. First thing we're going to do, let's go to our patch page and select the oscillator waveform. And for right now, I'm just going to click New. So I'm selected on a sine wave. I'm going to click New, and you'll see that takes us directly to the wave page and shows us this sine wave. So now what we're doing is creating a waveform based on the factory sine wave preset. Here on this side, you have your preset waveforms. So if you have multiple, they'll all show up here. And below that, it shows you what it's assigned to. This could be an LFO, an oscillator, envelope, all sorts of things. Just so we can talk about all the functions, I'm going to go back to the patch page and select a morphed waveform. And I'm going to click New here. So now you can see we have an additional waveform in the preset list. If I click the sine wave, you can see the options are only waveform and spectrum. Waveform shows you the waveform and lets you edit it in the time domain, whereas spectrum shows you the spectrum view and lets you edit the waveform in the frequency domain. Next to that, we have morph. Let's go to our morph wave here. There's a better view of the spectrum where you can actually edit it in the frequency domain. We're going to touch on this in just a bit. Let's go to the morph view. In this view, you can configure the morphing between your waveforms within your morphed waveform. You also have an AB, which allows you to select either of the base waveforms for editing. Again, we're going to get into the morph editing a little bit later. I'm going to go back to patch. You'll notice that the user waveforms have parentheses around them, where factory waveforms do not. So here we have a sine wave. Pretty straightforward. We have 3 different draw modes. We have line mode, which builds waveforms with straight lines. You can use the anchor point to select where the line starts, and wherever you click is where the line is going to end. So for this, let's just go ahead and go to transform. We're going to get into this menu momentarily and initialize. I'm going to set this in the middle here, and let's click down here and drag this up. So you can see it starts where the anchor point is and ends wherever your mouse is. So if I go here and click down here, I can drag this down. Just like that, we've created a wave. Let's initialize again and go to the curve mode. This works like the line mode, but inserts a curved line instead of a straight line. The results are smoother transitions between segments, which can help attenuate harsh, high-frequency contents. So again, let's just set this in the center. I'll drag this up. You can see we have a nice curve here. Let's do the same thing. Click. You can see I can kind of click in the middle and move my mouse wherever. We have that nice curve. Let's go ahead and initialize this one. The next mode is stretch mode. When you're selected here, a second anchor point appears in the waveform display, which you can see here. We have 2 anchor points now. Moving these around lets you expand or compress the part of the waveform between the anchor points. Basically, what you're doing is almost setting a boundary box, and now we can adjust our waveform within that box. So I can put one there. Let's move these down here and drag this down. We can drag the whole thing up, which adjusts this one relatively. Let's do a small wave here. A little one there. We're almost creating multiple frequencies within that wave now. And you can mix these modes, right? So we can go to line mode if we want, set that there, then make this a sharp line. So I have another sine wave loaded here. Let's talk about the Edit and Transform menu. This menu is split up into 2 sections. The transformations from the upper group are directly applied to the waveform, whereas the transformations from the lower group down here open a dedicated transform panel with additional settings at the top of the page. Let's go ahead and just lower the gain here. Go to transform, I can normalize. It's gonna bring it back up to 0 dB. I'm gonna lower the gain again and change the offset here. And we have DC offset, which you can see adjust the amplitude offset of the waveform so that the waveform's energy will be evenly distributed between its positive and negative sections. Notice this is all the way at the top here. This one's all the way at the bottom, so it's evenly distributed. We have invert, flips the waveform vertically. I'm gonna go ahead and draw in a couple lines here so you can really see how this next feature functions. We have reverse, which flips the waveform horizontally. Different than invert, we can reverse it back. Then we get into this lower section, which again opens an additional dialog box. Let's start with phase offset. This is our current sound as it is. So now we're in phase offset. This lets you adjust the phase of the waveform. You can see we're changing phase. We can click here and drop into other menus. It's good to know before going to the next option, if you want to save this to your waveform, you have to click apply. Otherwise, it's not going to save it. I'm going to go back and select another sine wave because I think that's the best way to show this feature. Let's go to fractalize. And this one is really awesome because what it does is it adds smaller copies of the waveform to the waveform itself. So parts of the waveform become similar to the shape of the whole. You can use this to add overtones to the waveform. It's really great for creating powerful organic waveforms. So let's just change this to 2. And you can see what we're doing here is this was just a sine wave. We're adding an additional sine wave in here. You can adjust the slope. There's our regular sine wave. Look, we're adding one. And the displacement of where that addition is being added. It's almost in the middle. And then now we can add iterations of that. So you're adding additional harmonics to that wave by doing this. Just at the front. So that is the fractalize. Next we have FM. This applies frequency modulation to your waveform. What's cool here is you can actually use any of the waveforms you have created or the factory waveforms to modulate your waveform. So if we wanted to modulate this with a square wave, you can change the amount. You can hear it oscillating when I'm changing it. Can add more frequencies in there. Which frequency is being modulated, and the phase of those frequencies. We change this to something like a saw wave. Here it changes the sound. So that is the FM. Let's go to mix. The mix function mixes the waveform with another one. So pretty straightforward. Again, you have options to add an additional waveform in. So let's just add a square wave. You can see how we're going from a sine wave to a square now. Lower our mix. Full square. Now we're back to our sine wave. Same thing, frequency adjust. Hear those harmonics. And phase. Pretty cool. This is a really powerful feature. Next we get to the filter. This just adds a filter to the waveform. Let's change this to a square wave. Okay, back to the filter. High pass. Band pass. And then the resonance of those filters. You can really see those. Sorry about that. Frequencies come out. Next we get to the larynx filter. This simulates resonant frequencies of the human vocal tract as it produces different vowels. Reminds me of the vowel waveform in Massive, especially if we turn up that resonance. Oh, you're an O there, and you can shift it. The last one here is the distortion function. This just applies distortion to the waveform, pretty straightforward. Really start clipping when we turn it up. Symmetry and the mix of the distortion. And to apply it, you just hit apply. The next page is the copy and paste and the edit waveform. I actually use this a lot as like an undo or redo feature. So let's say I added some cool points in my wave. I really like this. One thing I'll do is I'll normally just copy it, and you can paste this on other waveforms. So if we want to paste it here, we can. But let's say I'm back on my original and I make some adjustments because, I don't know, I'm just trying stuff. I don't really like how that sounds, so sometimes I'll just paste it back and I have my original. I mean, another way to do this is to go to the patch page and just create a new variation of it, and you can have an additional one. So there's multiple ways to do it, but that's how I like to use the edit, copy, and paste. Here we have the gain functionality, which adjusts the overall gain, and you have offset for the positive and negative side of the waveform. Here we are on the spectrum view of the wave page. This lets you shape the selected waveform in the frequency domain. It shows the first 512 harmonics of the selected waveform as a series of bars. The color bars in the top half show the harmonics amplitude, and the white bars in the bottom half show their phases. The fundamental frequency, which is also called the first harmonic, is represented by the first pair of colored white bars at the full left. So right here, this is our fundamental frequency. Since we're selected on a sine wave right now, there's only one fundamental frequency, and this is it. Whereas if I go to a square wave, you can see there's a lot more frequencies going on here. So for right now, let's just stick to the sine wave, and let's talk about the two different modes. You have draw mode, which allows you to select any of the points here and pull up a frequency. So here's our fundamental frequency of this sine wave. I'm playing G. You can see I have an oscilloscope showing the waveform here, and let's pull up an additional frequency. You'll see a change. You can see we're adding in that additional harmonic. If we go back to the waveform page, you can see we've added it here. Let's take it down just so you can see the difference. Now we're back to a regular sine wave. Notice our amplitude of the wave is lower. Look at the gain. That's because we're not all the way up here. Let's turn that all the way up. And now we're full. So it's just another way of viewing your waveform in a different format. Let's go back to the spectrum page and shift the phase a little bit. And then you'll see now we've shifted the phase. So it's really great for that fine detail. You can go in here and add some additional harmonics, shift their phase. Look what we've done here. Pretty cool. The next draw mode is multi-harmonic mode. In this mode, you can click anywhere in the display and drag your mouse to draw amplitudes or the phase of multiple harmonics in one go. So it's just another way to draw. You can easily draw in multiple harmonics. Do some pretty crazy stuff there. Look at this fine detail of ultra high waves up here. I'm going to go to transform and clear all. And we're back to our fundamental. Now let's explore the transform page. Let's go to transform, and shift harmonics is our first option. This shifts all the harmonics to the left or right. It's pretty straightforward. You have a simple shift parameter here. So you're basically adjusting the fundamental frequency with the shift function. Next, we have the slope filter. This progressively attenuates or amplifies the harmonics on either side of a particular harmonic called the crossover harmonic. So we set the crossover, and then we can adjust the slope. See where our crossover is over here? Let's bring that higher. We can pull these back up, or do the high. Let's lower the crossover. and that is the slope filter. Next, we have generate harmonics. And for this one, let's go back to the sine wave. So back on the sine wave, transform, generate harmonics. And you can see we've generated a ton of new harmonics from that sine wave. We have slope dB, which adjusts how fast the amplitude decreases in the series. Balance, which adjusts the mix between the original spectrum and the generated series. Series multiple includes only specific multiples in generated series. For example, if we're set to 2, you're going to see we're only generating the 2nd, 4th, and 6th harmonics. Whereas if we set to 3, we're going to generate the 3rd, 6th, and 9th. Let's go back to 2. This feature here adjusts the starting harmonic in the series. Now we're back on that first fundamental. So just shifting where we're adjusting. And that is the spectrum page. The final view on the wave page is the morph view. The morph view is only available when a morph waveform is selected in the preset waveforms list on the left. To do this, you're going to want to go to any of the pages that allow you to select a waveform. That could be LFO, it could be the patch page, and click morph and select a morphed waveform. Let's just click this one for instance, and then click new. Now you're going to get a morphed waveform option. So I've gone ahead and simplified these two waveforms to make this a little easier to understand both audibly and visually. So right now our waveform A is a square wave, semi-square, and B is something like a sine wave here. So on our morph tab, here is wave 1 and wave 2. These can be edited just like you would edit a standard waveform. Using A and B, you can change your points, draw anything in, and use the transform tools as normally. You can also edit them in the spectrum tab, and again, switch between A and B. So back on our morph tab, right now I have this slider all the way to the left, and that is going to be wave A. It's going to sound similar to a square wave. And if we go all the way to the right, we're going to be wave 2, which is similar to a sine wave. A couple extra harmonics in there. You'll notice down here our output, this shows you the sum of these two waves. So if I set this to 50%, now you're getting a mix of both wave 1 and 2 in the output. You can visually see that by this square wave up here and this nice curved wave and how it looks different. It starts square and then starts the curve, and then you get this nice break just as you do here. So that's the morph happening between these two. Now you have anchor points. Right now I have 2 anchor points set. You can set up to 4 anchor points, and you can see these here with A and B. These points define references for the morphing. Each anchor point in wave 1 is linked to the point with the same letter in wave 2. For example, right now we have A and B for our anchor points. Wave 1 will be morphed into the segment between the same anchor points A and B in wave 2. So if I change the segment on wave 2 to only this curved positive waveform, you're going to see how this complete segment between A and B here is being morphed into this smaller segment down here. So see that little break there, just like it's here. It's getting pushed into this smaller section. And we can do the opposite as well. We can just morph this positive part of the waveform into all of wave 2. Now you'll see it's much higher, and the actual downward trend here happens over here. So I think visually this is the best way to explain how the morphing works between these anchor points. Now you can morph different sections. Let's go ahead and add in 4 anchor points. Now we're getting C and D. Just like we did with A and B, what's going to happen is the morphing is going to happen between these anchor points. So let's put that over there, and let's just set C and D to morph here. And we can adjust the slider. That's all of A, all of B. So you can have a lot of fun with changing the morphine on these anchor points. Let's switch this to this wave. Click New. Now it's only morphed this little part here. Other than that, we have an edit for copy and paste waveforms. And that's the morphing page right there. Now we're looking at envelopes and modulation. This is where sound comes to life over time, from shaping dynamics to creating movement across filters and wavetables using custom envelope shapes. The envelope page of Absynth 6 lets you design advanced envelopes for modulating the parameters of the instrument. On the page here, let's just look at these main sections. Here on the left, we have our envelope list. This contains all the envelopes used in the preset. So let's just go to another preset here so you can really see the list grow. You can select multiple and they'll all show up in the main window here, or you can select individual envelopes. If you hold Shift, you can select a group of them and scroll down, or you can hold Command on Mac or Control on Windows and select different ones throughout the list. Again, you can scroll down and see them, and you can select them just by clicking on each envelope, puts this nice little white rectangle around them. Down here, we have our master envelope macros. These are 4 macro knobs that can be freely assigned to breakpoints, which makes breakpoints inside the envelopes available for MIDI control. So it's like an extra set of macros outside of your 16 macros that you can MIDI map to these individual breakpoints, which we will get into. Also in this control panel, we have our view options, which is really convenient if you have a ton of different envelopes. You can actually just say, I want to see everything going to channel A, and it's going to select those. We just want to see the modulators. Well, this preset doesn't have any. What about the filters? Now it's going to show us our envelope filters. So it's a really nice way for finding a specific envelope, especially if you have a long list of envelopes where things can get pretty complex pretty quickly. Above the view, you have the option to create new envelopes. So you can just create new and select your modulation source. So depending on which patch you're on, these will show up as different options. And you can just select their parameters. So we can just click here and hit add. And if you want to create multiple envelopes, you can pin this window and just add multiple different envelopes and they'll all show up. We can get out of there and go to them here. We've discussed how to add an envelope through this page right here, but you can also select a parameter, right-click on it, and create a new envelope. Now automatically create the envelope for whatever parameter you are selecting. Up top here, these are the envelope and breakpoint settings, depending on what you're selected on. You can see it tells us our name. Let's just select one envelope for now. Here's our name. This is our mode. We're going to go through these different modes. If you're selected on a breakpoint, you can see some additional settings pop up for breakpoint settings, which macro things are going to, and where they're assigned. So let's go ahead and create a new preset. And you're just going to see we have our 3 standard envelopes that are always on here for each channel, A, B, and C. I'm just going to stick with A for now. In our main envelope view here, you'll see we have time up here in seconds. We can turn the grid on, which makes it a little bit easier to see exactly the second markers. And when you're dragging, they'll automatically snap to those grid markers. Quick note, if you're holding Shift, you can actually bypass those snaps and just drag it wherever you want. Right now, our mode is on sustain. So if I hold a note, it's going to go through this first attack phase. Let's stretch that attack phase out so you can really hear it. Then we hit our decay phase, and this point is going to be our sustain. So we're going to go slow attack. It's going to decay down to the sustain marker, and it's going to stay here until we let go of the note, at which point it will release. Attack, decay, sustain, and I'm letting go, release. So that is a basic ADSR envelope. Release is actually the first mode. We're going to go through the attack stage, hit the decay, and regardless of how long you're holding the note, it's going to automatically go to the release stage. So you'll notice that it won't stop at the sustain marker. I'm still holding the note and it went all the way through. So that's release. This next mode is loop, and we can set our own loops between these two pink markers. You can see it's going to loop. And when I let go of the note, it's going to jump to the release stage. You can move these markers around if you create more breakpoints. So we'll just double click. We can drag this down here. And again, when I let go, it'll jump to this release stage. So that is the loop setting. Then we get to re-trigger. In re-trigger mode, when you play a note, the envelope restarts at regular intervals as long as you keep the note held. You can adjust the re-trigger interval by using the beat control in the envelope settings, which is right here. So this is nice because it'll sync to a beat. So right now we're on 4 beats. Let's just change this down to 1. Slow it down. It's also good to note that when you let go of the note, the envelope will jump to the sustain and release marker and continue from there to the end. And I'm letting go. Notice it went to sustain and then to the end. Notice how things change here depending on what you're selected on. So we have a sync option on and off. When sync is on, the envelope will sync with the tempo of your DAW. This is really convenient for doing rhythmic stuff. I'm not going to get into transform until a little later. In our edit menu, we have copy, paste envelope, initialize, and depending on if you have a different envelope source, you'd be able to delete it, but we are selected on an amp envelope. So let's create a new envelope, and I'm going to assign this to pitch so we can really hear it, and I'm going to add that in. Let's talk about breakpoints. Breakpoints allow you to make adjustments to your envelope. So you can have all these different points and really shape your own envelopes beyond just ADSR. So right now, this is assigned to the pitch of oscillator A. And up here, it shows you the settings of the breakpoint. We're going down -22. So you can really fine tune it here, or you can actually do it up here if you want to be very specific. We could say, let's go -6. So now we're going down 6 semitones. We have time, stretches this out. Same thing as if you were to just drag this and stretch it out. And then our slope, which can also be adjusted here. Make it more parabolic. We also have a lock option. When lock is selected, you'll notice the endpoints don't move. Whereas when lock is deselected, you can drag the entire thing out. This is really convenient if you have multiple breakpoints and you want to only adjust in between them. Whereas if this is deselected, we can stretch the whole thing out. To get rid of breakpoints, you just double click, deletes them. Under seconds, you'll see this little triangle. And what this does is it shows you the seconds based on the previous breakpoint. So if I adjust this, you will see our time change based on this breakpoint. Now, if we take that off, you're going to see the time based on the first breakpoint or the attack, the beginning of the envelope. So it's just a nice way to see where you are on the grid and in the time domain. You can change transpose to amount. Let's get rid of this one. Just a different way to view it. And slope can be changed to step. And now you're getting these steps, which you can move up and down just like a step sequencer. Again, really great for doing rhythmic stuff. So if you had different breakpoints in here, now we're stuck at that sustain. Let's make some adjustments to the macros. I'm going to pull this back down to adjust the pitch. And here we have our time macro. So these are assignments for our actual macros down at the bottom, not our envelope macros. So we can set time to control macro 1. Let's scale this. Now if I adjust this, it's going to speed it up or slow it down. Let's go all the way to 100. It's that fast. So that adjusts time horizontally. You can also go all the way down into negative to reverse the macro. So it's like inverting. Set this back to 0. Outside of macros, you can also assign this to the mod wheel aftertouch, sustain pedal, or velocity. And let's assign the amp macro to that same one. Ignore the name for now. And let's start scaling the amp. So this is going to be vertically. Turning it down. Whereas if it's all the way up, you're not hearing that pitch change because it's just keeping it up top. Let's go to the next page, which is assigning to our master envelopes. So same thing here. We can assign this to envelope 1, 2, 3, or 4, which are right here, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And you get the same functionality, time and amount. So it's just additional macro control. Super slow, or we can go the opposite way. Go really fast. These are bipolar, so in the middle is going to be normal. If you click on it again, it'll unassign it. Now let's talk about the LFO. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, and you'll see an LFO appear on our envelope. Stuck at that sustain, and I let go, it fades off. We're hearing our amp envelope, which is controlling the main amplitude of the sound, and the LFO envelope, which is controlling the pitch, which is why you're getting that wobble effect. We can select here and change our waveform to any waveform. Square wave. Pretty crazy. And then you can control the envelope of this LFO. So we can start it slow. And since we're controlling pitch, this is going to essentially be the transpose. And you can see it's transposing, starting low, and then LFOing higher. We can change the rate by adjusting the seconds. Let's select another breakpoint. You'll see these functions change every time we select a different breakpoint. So the depth, which will change the pitch. Let's just set this one back to 0 transpose for now. The depth will change the pitch amount of that transpose. And then we have seconds, which changes the speed of the oscillation. So between this breakpoint, we're pretty quick. And then we slow down between here as this changes. And then when we get to the release, we can slow down even more. Now you're getting that low transpose, which is speeding up and then slowing down. Let's change this back to a sine wave. I'm going to delete this one. And we can adjust the phase. You have phase adjustment for your LFO here and sample and hold. When sample and hold is off, the LFO steadily follows the selected waveform. When it's on, the LFO samples the waveform by extracting a value at regular intervals. It maintains this value until the next value is sampled. This process generates like a staircase modulation signal based on the selected waveform. So I selected a sine wave, that way you'll really hear the difference. This is off. And this is on. You hear it staircasing, going up in pitch until it hits that sustain, and then it stays there because we've reached that amount based off the seconds here. Let's change waves. Really cool things you can do here. Let's discuss these other two modes, which are available on envelopes that are not the amplitude envelopes of the oscillators. We have control driven, which is controlled by a macro. So we can just set this to this macro knob here. And let's pitch this down. You can see that control happening as I change the macro. This is really useful if you want to automate this macro knob to change over time in your DAW or on your MIDI controller. You can adjust this and have it control a specific envelope. The other option is link, and this allows you to link whatever envelope you're selected on to a source envelope. So for right now, this is amp 1, which is our amp envelope. Now you can't adjust anything in here because we are linked. Right now our source is set to envelope of the oscillator A amplitude, which is this one here. So you're going to notice they look identical. Now when we hit that release phase, it's dropping the pitch down. Let's turn the LFO on. Now you can hear it adjusting the pitch based on that envelope of oscillator A. You can adjust the amount. In this case is the transpose, up or down, the time, and the slope. You can also adjust the offset. So this is great if you just want to link something to have an envelope modulated based off of another envelope. Let's talk about the transform menu. Let's start with scale. This scales the various parameters of the envelope, and you can choose which parameters should be scaled into which extent. You have time, amp, slope, and amp offset. You can see how these adjust here. If we do time, it'll speed it up or slow it down. This is a really great way to just make some overall adjustments to your envelope. Amp. You can also go positive. Slope. You can see those slopes adjusting. Square waves almost. And then you have amp offset. So you can offset the amp. You can also do selected envelope or all visible envelopes. So if you have multiple selected, and we're on transform and scale, you can see we can scale multiple envelopes at once. Let's just go back to our pitch envelope. So I've initialized it. We currently have 4 breakpoints, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This creates a rhythmic pattern by triggering the envelopes on selected steps, like a step sequencer. If we go to transform and expand to rhythm, we can add additional breakpoints in. Right now I have it on 8. We can add up to 16 breakpoints, and you can turn them on and off. So this is really useful if you have some things that are drawn in, like this. Then we can go transform, expand to rhythm. And if we turn those off, you're going to see your drawings come through. And I'm doing that with just one key. We can apply that, put LFO on top of that. Really cool. Let's initialize this, transform, and let's generate an AR pulse, which is the last one here. This creates a series of attack release pulses based on the original envelope. Can adjust the shape, slope, the amount, BPM, duration, and the minimum level. Let's apply that out of LFO to it. Now we have an LFO on each one of these pulses. So those are the settings within the transform menu. Let's explore some presets that have different envelopes on them. Here's a good example. I love this sound, but maybe I don't want it to filter in the beginning. So we can view just our filters. It selects them for us. And now I can clearly see here, this envelope is dropping down from the start of the attack in this decay phase and then going back up. Just to confirm, let's turn this way down. It's exactly what's happening. So we can turn this up. Or maybe we want to start it low. And maybe I also want this to affect filters B and C. So we can change these to link a filter A. Link a filter A. And now they're all going to do the same thing based off A. Maybe filter A want to LFO. So that is the envelope page. You can assign these to tons of different parameters, effects, different modulators, different modules, oscillators, and so on. The LFO page. LFOs provide ongoing modulation. Here we'll break down how they're shaped, how they play back, and how they're routed to different destinations. The LFO page of Absynth 6 lets you configure up to 3 LFOs as modulation sources for a wide range of different controls across the instrument. LFOs, or low-frequency oscillators, produce a periodic modulation signal that can be used for slow evolving or rapid movements of controls. Here on the LFO page, you'll notice we have 3 LFOs, 1, 2, and 3. You can easily turn them on and off with these buttons right here. And each one gives you the same controls. So we're just going to focus on LFO 1 for right now. The first thing you're going to notice is our waveform, and this is selectable. You can select any of the preset waveforms from the factory, the morph waveforms, or you can create your own. Next to that, we have our time. This can be based in seconds, or if you click here, it can be in beats, depending on your synced tempo. We have phase, which shifts the phase of the wave. And then this section here is for sample and hold, which we will get into. Below that, we have our targets, and this is what you are targeting with your LFO. So the pitch is always here. This will always adjust and affect the pitch. These sliders control the depth of the modulation. This tells you what it's being targeted to, so an oscillator, or that could be a modulator. And then next to that, we have our channels A, B, and C, which match our patch page A, B, and C. Let's just go ahead and turn up the pitch modulation. I'm going to play a note first. And let's turn it up. We can speed it up. We can slow it down. If you want less pitch, you can lower this. Hit the invert button there. So here we have invert, which inverts the wave. Let's change this to something like a saw wave so you can really hear how the invert works. Now we'll invert it. We can take off some of the channels, so let's remove B from this, and now only channel A is going to be affected by this modulation. So you hear B playing in the background there. Let's put just B on. Let's go ahead and turn this down. You can also hit Option and click. Below the pitch, we get additional targets, and these can all be changed with this drop-down arrow. So they're preset to a couple targets, but again, you have options for pretty much all of the oscillator control. Below that are the modulator controls, so filters, combs, clouds. Here's some more modulators, wave shapers, our inserts, and then you can actually send it back to the LFO itself and control the LFO with an LFO. If you change to something like a modulator, you'll notice you have 2 options that appear, just like we do down here. And that's because there are 2 modulator filters. So if we go to the patch page, you have these 2 filters here, 1 and 2, and those correspond to 1 and 2. That works the same with modulators and the wave shapers. Let's turn up the filter frequency modulation. So right now you'll notice we are only affecting the filter frequency of 1 and 2 on channels A and B. But on our patch page, we only have filters on channel A. So if I turn these on channel B, you'll now hear the LFO affecting both filters. All of the sound is under a filter now. You can also do things like change this to a notch filter. Let's turn these off. Go back to the LFO page. So a lot of control there by adjusting which filters are being controlled. Let's turn those off. And now let's talk about poly and sample and hold. I'm going to turn up the pitch. Let's turn on sample and hold. When this is active, the modulation produced by the LFO is turned into a staircase waveform by holding its momentary value at a frequency set by the sample and hold rate control. Let's change this to a sine wave so you can really hear this effect. Here's a smooth sine wave controlling the pitch with sample and hold off. Now when we turn sample and hold on, you're going to hear it walk up a staircase and then walk down the staircase. You can also switch this to beats. It's almost like an arpeggiator. Pretty cool. Lots of cool things you can do with sample and hold. Let's turn the pitch down, and I'm going to turn the volume up on the amplitude. Let's go back to a sine wave here. So right now our amplitude is being controlled by a sine wave. And you'll notice if I play another key, it's going to add an additional LFO on that specific key's voice. So you're getting multiple LFOs per voice when we're selected on poly up here. This is how that sounds. Notice how they're not perfectly in sync with each other. If we switch this to mono, all the voices will run through one single LFO, so they'll all oscillate together. So it really depends on what you want to do there, but you have control over mono or poly. Back to our targets, we have our effect target. This menu is going to change based off what effect you have selected. So let's go to our effect page, turn on the effects, and let's just change this to pipe for right now. Go back to LFO, and you'll notice now we have fewer options, but these are the options for the pipe effect. Let's go ahead and affect the time. Turn this up. Now if we change this to something like the etherizer and go back to the LFO page, effect time is still an option to be modulated, but we have all these additional controls now, which we can also modulate. Why don't we do transpose of the grain? So that's for the LFO effects. Let's turn that down. The next one is pan, which controls the LFO of the pan. Speed this up. Get some nice tremolo effects. The last option we have down here is controller, and these allow you to assign the LFO depth, rate, and sample and hold rate to different macros. So let's turn up the pitch so you can really hear what's happening here. And let's assign the depth to macro 1. Right now it's all the way up. We can lower the depth, which is essentially the same thing as lowering the pitch. Modulation depth. Let's go ahead and take this assignment off and set the rate, and we can control the amount going to it right here, up or down. And you have phase invert here. Slows it down. And the max is going to be the fastest setting you have. So if I speed this up, adjust this, you're not going to get as much control. Whereas if this is at 100, it's going to slow down. And you can invert it. And those are the controller settings. So this is the LFO page. Again, you can have 3 LFOs controlling multiple targets of many different options here, and it really gives you the ultimate control over all of your modulation. This is the assign page. This is where performance and expression are shaped, defining how Absynth reacts to your playing and external control. The assign page of Absynth 6 lets you configure macros, MIDI control, note scaling, and tuning of the instrument. Here on the left-hand side, we have our assignments and note scaling options up top, which give you all of their options within each menu below. So if we go to note scaling, you'll see any of the parameters that can be modulated by the played pitch. And under assignments, you're going to see all of our parameters and macro controls. Here we can select things like velocity, mod wheel, aftertouch, the sustain pedal, and each macro control, and assign different parameters to them. Next to that, we have our global response area. This shows the global settings affecting how the instrument reacts to your input. And below that, as you've seen, we have the assignment details and note scaling details. So this lets you configure any of the details or control parameters depending on what you have selected here on the left-hand side. Let's start with the global response area. At the very top here, we have our voices, and this defines the number of voices produced by Absynth 6. This setting will affect all presets. So right now we're on 8 voices, which means we can play 8 notes at a time. We can change this to 1 note, and you'll notice it'll be louder. So now it's basically unison. And you can take this all the way up to 64 individual voices. Just set that back to 8 for now. Next to that, we have the BPM. This sets the global tempo measured in beats per minute. This only affects Absynth 6 if you're running it as a standalone application. If you're running it in a DAW, it's going to be tempo locked to whatever your DAW is. Next, we have transpose, which globally shifts the pitch up or down by semitones, and you can even change it by cents, which can be described as 1/1000th of a semitone. So you can get those tones in between notes, which is pretty cool here. After that, we get to pitch bend. This adjusts the pitch bend range available from the MIDI pitch bend input in semitones. Right now we're at 12. And next to that, you have smoothing, which adjusts how fast the pitch reacts to the pitch bend changes. So let's set this all the way down, holding a note and changing pitch bend. Pitch bend up, let go. Pitch bend down, let go. So you notice it reacts right away. Let's go ahead and turn this all the way up. Pitch bend up, still pitching up. I'm holding it all the way up and letting go. You'll hear it slowly go back. So that is smoothing. After that, we get to glide, and this adjusts the duration of gradual pitch transitions between played notes. So right now, glide is off, so I'll play 1 note and then another. You'll notice there is no glide between the pitches. And if I turn this up, you hear the glide happening between those pitches. Right now, legato is off, so that means the glide will affect all notes. If you turn this on, it'll only affect the notes that are connecting. So I'll play 1 note, I'm going to add another, and you'll hear the glide start to engage. If you have this set on 1 voice, making it monophonic, you can glide between notes. So pretty cool option with glide on. Just gonna set this back to 8. Turn this off. And then finally we get to tuning. This selects a global tuning of Absynth 6. If we click here, we can select another tuning from the list of predefined tunings, and you can also import your own. So we can go to import file tuning. You're going to want to place your tuning files inside this folder here. So you can click show tuning folder, and then you can import your own tuning files. You just hit apply to apply it. Absynth supports MTS ESP micro tunings. This is the macro section. Macros let you tie multiple parameters together and control them from a single place, turning complex sound design into something playable and performance-ready through the macro tab. Let's start with the assignments, and we're going to go ahead and assign a macro control before we get into these options up here. Macro controls can be assigned in a few different ways. The first way is to just select your parameter right here by clicking the Add button, and this will give you a list of all the available parameters that can be assigned to a macro. Now with this patch, I don't have a lot of envelopes or oscillators or anything like that. It's pretty basic, so as you can see, there's not a lot of options here. The other way we can do this is by going to a page such as the patch page. Let's go ahead and turn on the filter here. I'm going to turn this all the way up and change the slope to something a bit more aggressive. So now you're here. Let's go back to the assign page and click add. And now you're going to see there's that filter option for M1 or the resonance of the filter. We can click that and simply assign it like that. And it names it filter frequency and puts the assignment on that macro. The other way to do this, let's remove it, is go back to the patch page. And if we right click, we can go to modulation settings. You're going to get that same option to assign it to a macro here. Filter frequency, you have your depth and your invert amount. You can change all this on the assign page, or you can assign it to velocity right here. So back on the assign page, there it is. Let's go ahead and adjust the macro. These macros can be MIDI assigned. You can either type in by double clicking, or you can click learn. And I will assign this to the touch strip on the Control MK3 keyboard. There it is, 11. Now I have control over it. If your keyboard supports MPE, you can turn MPE on right here, and you can map this to pressure or slide and control the depth of that MIDI polyphonic expression right here. I'll go ahead and turn that off for now. On the macro itself, you have depth control of the parameter you have selected. So if you don't want it to go through the whole range, so I'm going to filter a little bit. We can invert it. And we have the smoothing. If we turn this all the way down, you'll notice it'll be instant and react right away. And if we turn this up to 100, I'm going to hit the note and then adjust the knob. You'll notice it takes a bit of time to get down. So the smooth option is really nice, especially if you're doing like some slow ambient pad and you want things to move over time. It's a really great way to do that. And we can add multiple parameters here. Let's just go a little wild and affect oscillator A main pitch. And again, we can tone this down if we want so it doesn't pitch as much. Why don't we invert it? Pretty cool option there. You just click here to remove. If you want to change the name of your macros, you can double click here and name this whatever you'd like. That'll update across the preset. So that's how you assign macro controls. You can assign up to 16 different macros. You have 2 different pages of macros here. So lots of option, lots of control. Let's go ahead and remove that. And let's go to velocity. Under the velocity tab, there's some presets here for you. And you can also add additional parameters. For instance, let's turn up A and B on our oscillators A and B amp. If I play softer, it's not as loud. If I really hit the key, you can hear it. Again, you can do this with a number of different things. Let's go ahead and add M1 frequency. Play softer, it's filtered. If I play louder, it's unfiltered, or vice versa. So lots of control here under velocity. You have mod wheel, same functionality. Select what you'd like to your mod wheel. Aftertouch. If your controller supports polyphonic aftertouch, you can use multiple keys to adjust parameters, and each one will get its own message. So let's go back to the filter here, and regular aftertouch is going to affect any notes played when you push down into that aftertouch zone on your keyboard. So right now I'm holding a chord, and regardless of which note I push down into that aftertouch zone on your keyboard, it's going to open the filter on all of the notes at the same time. And if your keyboard supports polyphonic aftertouch, you can turn this on, and now each note will go through its own filter individually. Here, all those other two notes are still under a filter. I can bring them in by pushing into that aftertouch zone. So that's polyphonic aftertouch, and same thing, you can assign that to multiple different parameters. You can turn that on and off here. Go ahead and remove that. And then finally your sustain pedal, which is auto-assigned, and you can assign what you like to the sustain pedal. Now let's move on to note scaling. With note scaling, you can configure the modulation of specific parameters according to the played key. So for example, we could make the frequency of a filter follow the pitch of a key. On the left, you have the parameter list showing the available parameters you can map to the note scaling. Let's go ahead and select the filter frequency master, which is whatever filter is on the master output channel. In this instance, that's going to be M1 here. We have our MIDI note, and this allows you to really customize by notes. If you select MIDI note here, you can actually just select the note on your keyboard, and it's going to give you the control parameters for it. This is your scale amount. You can pull this down here. You'll see that note drop. You can also click right here and pull this down manually. Now you'll notice if I play C, it's going to be under a filter. Let's go a little bit more. And if I play the note next to it, it's not going to be under a filter. If you want to filter the high notes, you could do something like this. Now the high notes will be filtered on the keyboard, and the lower notes will be open outside of a filter. Make it a little bit more aggressive here so you can really hear it. If you want to make them all 100, you just click here and drag across, and there you go. That is the note scaling. And again, you have different parameters you can select from and scale them across your keyboard. And that's how to use everything in Absynth 6. If you have any questions, drop us a comment below. Thanks for watching. Check it out over at nativeinstruments.com.